Hey, welcome! Thanks for tuning in. This is There's Something About Archviz, a podcast where I discuss with experts and industry leaders about the many sides of the Archviz industry. I'm your host, Federico Biancullo. I am an Archviz artist, founder of The Big Picture, blogger, and content creator in the field of architectural representation. I'm on a journey to learn more on all things about Archviz, art direction, business, technology, you name it. And I would like you to be a part of this journey as well. Through these conversations, my hope is to bring light to not so obvious topics connected to our industry and help you grow as a professional, as an artist, and why not, as a human being as well. So please join me. Without further ado, let's jump into today's episode of There's Something About Archviz. Hello everybody, Happy New Year! This is the first episode of 2021 of There's Something About Archviz. I'll be honest with you, I don't usually like to make resolutions or wishes for the new year. The year change is just a convention for me and not really a mark for the beginning of something new. But you know what? This time I'll make an exception. You've probably heard it 1,000 times by now, but let's just hope this 2021 treats us just a bit better than 2020, shall we? Anyway, for this episode, I'm joined by two guests this time. Beatrice Piola and Ruggero Pedrini from the Digital Architecture Department of Barcode Architects. Barcode Architects is a Rotterdam-based architecture and urban design firm which has experience on a broad range of project size and scopes. And you know what? I'm really happy to finally have here on the show visualization artists that work in-house for architecture firms. I also have an in-house visualization artist background, by the way, and while these people have usually less exposure, they form a large and a very underrepresented part of our industry. Speaking of which, if you are an architectural visualization artist working in-house for an architecture firm, I'd like to hear about you and your experience for this podcast, so feel free to shoot me an email at podcast@bigpicturevisual.com. Anyway, in our chat, Beatrice and Ruggero told me how their department has carved out space to pursue their research and development activity, how they push the result of this research to the design teams, and why it's important not to give certain workflows and technologies for granted when working in-house. We also delved into how they used AR to present in a fun and engaging way Casanova, a residential tower in Rotterdam, which is one of the main ongoing projects designed by Barcode Architects. But I think that's enough from me. So here's the conversation with Beatrice and Ruggero. Enjoy! Let's talk about you because I'm really happy to have here people that are a bit outside the radar of the Archviz industry, but still, nonetheless, it's very interesting also to pick all these realities that work in-house. I think it's very important because a big part of our industry is made by people that work in-house. In your case, it's especially interesting because you don't do things in the usual way, but I'll let you explain. I just want you to introduce who you are to the audience and what you do.
Yeah, I can start. So I'm Ruggero, I'm 35. I'm living since 2015 in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam. So basically I'm an architect and construction engineer also, even though I work less than 5 minutes as an engineer actually. But I did work a bit as an architect for a few years back in Italy. Then I discovered it was not really my call. So I was getting more and more interested in the visual and the graphical part of the design process. I was also getting more and more passionate in realizing short movies. So back then I decided to have a fresh start, and then I joined the State of Art Academy. It was 2014 when it happened. I will never be grateful enough to them because they really structured my way of working. They really teach you a job more than the technical aspects of software and everything connected. So after that great experience, I did 1 year of freelance in Italy. I was working both for architectural images, but also was working a lot in motion graphics. I had the chance to work for a cultural project and academical project. I had few collaboration with the university in Italy. But then, yeah, at some point I felt like to grow, I need to work in a more structured environment. So that's why I chose to join a company. At that moment, I didn't really mind if it was going to be a render company or architectural company. Yeah, happened to be Barcode Architects in Rotterdam, and here I am.
So you both guys work at Barcode Architects. For those who don't know Barcode, maybe it's good that Beatrice also introduces a bit what's Barcode Architects. It's a Dutch architectural firm. I think it's a growing firm, but it's one of the leading companies in the Netherlands, probably also one of the youngest. But Beatrice, maybe you should also talk about yourself and about Barcode since we're here, you know.
Yeah, I'm Beatrice, I'm 28. I'm a member together with Ruggero of the Digital Architecture Department at Barcode Architects. And yeah, I'm a 3D artist too, but as first I'm an architect. I graduated in Genoa in Italy almost 4 years ago. But yeah, back then I didn't really know what to do. You know, like when you graduate, then architecture is such a wide field, let's say, of opportunities that you have a strong passion or you don't really exactly know what you want to do, no? But yeah, let's say that after 1 year that I was working at Lab Architects in Genoa, we were doing a lot of interior design and also custom-made furnitures. And somehow, since it was a small office, we really tried to push a lot also with the communication part. We were really like pushing all our energies into explaining to the client the main concept, even though it was maybe just an apartment refurbishment, till the very last detail of, I don't know, a joint between two pieces of wood for a furniture, because we were really trying to do everything. And there I started to realize like how important it is to communicate in a good way what you are doing from really the main concept till the detail. And that for me was a kind of, like illumination, like, oh, okay, maybe this is what I want to do, to communicate ideas, to, let's say, have this role of finding the perfect somehow way to communicate different things. And then after 1 year that I was working there, I started to look for something else. And this is how I got into Barcode Architects. Ruggero actually was searching for someone else to join his department. And it's been 3 years that we are working together. And talking about Barcode Architects is an emergent international office based in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. It was founded almost 10 years ago by Dirk Petters and Caro van de Ven. And now, together with a creative team of 70 professionals, including architects, urban designers, and technologists, and of course also our department, is dealing with several projects in the Netherlands but also abroad, such as urban master plans, mixed-use public buildings, residential and office towers, and also villas. So yeah, it's a very creative, dynamic and also exciting environment.
Something interesting that came up in our conversations before this recording is that you're not just a department that does images or animations for architecture. The most important thing, and that's why I also wanted to hear, is that you actually do research and development. So your department also started as a research and development area inside Barcode Architects. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So how did you start with this research, and what area does it cover? Because when it comes to in-house firms, usually it's very monothematic. It's usually doing just images, of course, and animations and jumping to projects, often with a very tight deadlines. I'm sure you still do this very often, but you're also trying to start these side projects. How did you start, and what kind of research do you cover in your department?
So basically, everything started around 4 years ago. So after my first year, more or less, in Barcode, I have to say I proposed myself to realize something a bit more diverse, so to create more multimedia content. So it was a nice dialogue. After this dialogue, I was asked to do a bit of research to show the possibilities on the market inside the office. So I took, let's say, something like 1 week to put together a presentation in which I realized some 360 images, some infographics, some motion graphics. I also realized a kind of a super clumsy video with a walkthrough with the VRA. Because you have also to imagine that, first of all, it was an architectural company. So in the end, you don't have also, super high quality graphic cards and processor. Plus also real time back then was not so popular. So yeah, I also try to do like a V-Ray frame by frame animation using 4 or 5 different computers overnight. But you don't have a lot of control on the final product. So I produced a series of media, and then in this presentation was quite clear what was really possible to achieve by us in terms of timing and resources, and what was not really feasible. So it was kind of a list of goals that we could achieve.
You said something interesting, that you did frame by frame animation to show the architects what was possible to do in terms of animation. You know, this is important, I think, because usually when you move the discourse to companies, many things are taken for granted somehow. Companies that are used to do this kind of animations, this kind of work, while when you move the discourse to an architectural firm, you don't have all these means. You don't know how is it like to do an animation, what it takes, what's the possible end result. So even though these things are usually done by communication companies, it's kind of difficult to move this kind of products inside an architecture office. So this is research and development as well, even though for many people this is not, but it still is to a certain extent, because architects don't always know the possibilities and the tools needed to do certain things.
That was indeed the first step to let them understand what were the possibilities. And then after the first steps, it happens a snowball effect, because, for instance, back then, one of the most appreciated product was the 360 image. That is not something unbelievable today, but yeah, back then was quite an innovation, the first step towards an immersive experience. So analyzing that media, what we needed was more probably some 3D assets, a 3D library, because before it was quite common that you could fill your images with Photoshop, the assets, even piece of furniture. When you need to fill a 360 image, then you really need 3D assets. And it's funny because that doesn't mean that it's gonna affect only the 360, because then when you spend a bit of time to create a library, then also your images are more precise, because then you really have the proper assets with the proper measurements. Your images improve. They improve also the quality. Also, you do the same amount of images in less time, of course. And then automatically you create more time to invest for other kind of research. And then, of course, another important thing is that also when you start to create a 3D asset library, the entire office starts to benefit from it. And that is the moment in which it becomes really clear that what you're doing is straightforward and is beneficial for the entire office. And then everyone start to see, you start a fire, let's say, because they can start to see results, and then you can really boost your research with the first results.
So your job becomes also the one of trying to push things to the architect, to show them the benefits of doing things in a certain way. For example, what you said about furniture. I know a lot of architects that still have the misconceptions that, for example, furniture can be placed in 2D, still in the images. Maybe they come to you and they ask you, maybe you can adjust this interior image in 2D, you can add some 2D furniture. And it's good that you have someone that dispels those misconceptions about doing, for example, everything in post or everything well organized, as you said, Ruggero, because that's something that I also faced in my time when I was working at Meccano, that we really needed a structured library. And whilst these things are taken as a granted by companies that do this, it is not so for architectural firms. So it's good to have a research and development also for these areas. In general, and maybe Beatrice can help chime in on this one, how do you actually try to push the products of your research to the design team? Because architects can be tough sometimes, they can be really anchored to certain old ways of doing things. So since it's also your job to try to push this, what strategies did you develop?
Let's say it took a bit of time because, as Ruggero was saying, the department started 4 years ago, so before I joined even. And let's say that what we found that is quite working is to really have a kind of a process. We do things and researches step by step. So first thing, we really see what can be useful for the office in first place. So we say, okay, maybe this new technology can fit the workflow, can fulfill the needs of the office. So we select a certain amount of topics, let's say, to research, so that we can have a kind of schedule that we know that in that period, let's say, we do that topic or the other topic. And then, we go really step by step, starting with simple things to see if it can work, if it convinces us. So once we are convinced about something, we really try to, let's say, make a final product almost to present to them. Because, many times maybe you have a great idea, but you don't really know how to communicate it in a good way. But also because, as Ruggero was saying, we are all different backgrounds. So maybe you have a great idea for, the construction part to visualize something. But of course, who is taking care of the construction part. Maybe he has a completely different background. It's really difficult from our side sometimes to do the right thing in the right moment. So that I think is the main thing that we try to do when we have something to present them. And then basically most of the times when we achieve a result, it's really like received as a positive thing. So we are really like from the office, we really receive positive feedbacks and they say you can continue in this way or in that way, or maybe you can modify a bit what you are doing because, I have to do this presentation next week. And then in that moment, we have, let's say, a pilot project. So we do until a certain period something that is more theoretical. So we find something to test on. But then when we have something that is maybe going for real to a presentation or to a competition or I don't know, then that is really the moment that we can prove to them and also to us and say we can really test the product. And we are quite happy because many times then the project is successful and we are also satisfied. So this is a bit the step-by-step workflow.
And I wonder now, since you also do images for competitions, so also work in the production part, not just the research and development part, how do you manage your time when it comes to the research and development? Do you schedule some blocks of times just for doing that? You just do it between projects? How does it work at your office?
We try to schedule so that we try to leave one person dedicated to research, but of course it's not always possible. So yeah, when there is something like a super urgent in which we need the full power on a competition, we just do competition. But in general, we always manage. So with long-term projects, we always fit in some research. Sometimes competition are also a chance to bring the research on, because as also Beatrice was mentioning, before we start a bit internally, the discussion and the development, then the second step is a bit as a freebie, a plus. So we are asked for doing 3 images and maybe we throw on the table also a 360 image or we do an AR experience. And maybe if particularly appreciated or particularly working, then the next time is going to be a request for the competition as well. Doesn't mean the competition is completely loose from possibility to do research. What I would like to add is also the fact that it's super important also the interlocutor that you are talking to can be a person or a team of person, because also this person has to really understand the potential, as Beatrice was saying, and also believe in it. And as well as another important factor is also the diversity, because we are in an office, but doesn't mean that it has to be the architect, the one to pick up the potential of the research.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Sometimes can be, of course, the PR, for instance. When you talk about multimedia, a video can be even more catchy to them than an architect sometimes. Or even the person in charge of the accountancy could, for instance, see the potential of a particular technology that you can use as a product.
That's interesting, because the accountant probably is the person that is furthest from the architecture in an architecture office, if you come to think about it. So the eyes with which they see the product is the eye of the person from the street. So it's the person that actually uses the technology we push out. The accountant is the closest person to the end target of our images, because most of the time when we do 3D images and 3D products, CGI, we do it not for the architects, because architects usually use the language of architecture, but they're made for people that cannot read the language of architecture. So, the accountant usually doesn't read that language. Maybe it's useful to have the opinion on these kind of products, on the effectiveness of these kind of products from someone that doesn't speak that kind of language.
Yeah, I completely agree. Also because in the end, I think talking 24/7 with only architects will never bring out of the box feedback, no? So you're always trying to convince yourself and your colleagues about something that maybe we already know. I think creativity can really be defined as something, so the ability to connect different things that they don't look like as connected. So it's to be connected. And for sure, when you have like an outsider feedback, can really make the entire process smoother.
Which kind of products did you actually use in, for example, a competition or a tender? Can you give me some tangible example of your research?
Basically, in competition, we started with videos. Well, the first videos we made, they were with the Unreal Engine, then we switched a bit to Enscape, and then to Emotion, that made everything a bit easier. But then, of course, the animation is a big plus to a submission, because it's really, once again, the less technical, all the production of architectural company. In the end, it's something that puts together, music and a bit of mood. Even simply a happy soundtrack can put you in a different mood. something that is not really so easy with paper and even images and these kind of things. So we started with that. And then, so when the jury has to judge, but you can also present you can show your design in person, you can also add extra layers of interactivity. So it happened that they brought some headset or some glasses, even to show some 360 images, 360 videos, because virtual reality starts to be a bit too complicated to be effective in a short window of time. Because of course you have to face the time and the skills to be learned to use a VR set. But of course, a 360 video is really immediate. You can just put it, you can even watch it via the phone. So it's also a technology that is not, intrusive, because this is also another big topic, no? Pushing an idea, because when something's related to technology, there is also a lot of prejudice. So technology, as I was saying before, is really seen something like untrustworthy, unsafe in a way. So they can steal your data. You have to put a set, so it can be almost dangerous. You can feel nausea. So it's also another big step in pushing the technology. You need to show that it's also something helpful, is also sustainable in a way, because also you could potentially switch to a physical model, maybe done with foam, to a virtual model. And also another big thing is that also many of these technologies are seen as too playful, because they come to more, video game-ish, video-ish kind of media. And it's really easy for an architect when it's involved in meeting with, investors. It's always super serious, the discussion.
Yeah, you're totally right. I'm realizing this with my blogging activity, Just to give you an example on this, with my colleague that is helping me with the contents we create in Italian for the Control Set blog, we are trying to push our content towards a live audience. So I'm thinking about moving actually to Twitch, part of the content. So to do live streamings of live painting, image critique, portfolio critique, etc. And our fear is that Twitch is too playful as a platform to move this kind of content. But if there's nobody that tries to push this kind of content on a new platform, nobody will for us. So it's good to try to use this media in a way that it's also educational and also insightful and helpful for the audience. So maybe what we see today as too playful, tomorrow could be a new media for selling or presenting or teaching. So that's really important, what you said. But you were mentioning also AR before, VR and AR. So you're really pushing on that aspect as well. We also talk about something that you did very interesting on the AR aspect of research and development. Beatrice also, we spoke about this in the past, about this app you realized for this Day of Architecture in Rotterdam. Maybe you can explain a bit about that, because that's a really interesting product of your department, and it's also one of the reasons I wanted to interview you here, to show the people that AR can actually be a thing in architecture, architectural visualization.
So as you were saying, we developed this app, which is an AR app for Casanova. This is a building that Barcode is building right now in the center of Rotterdam. And this app now basically is free. You can even try it. It's available both on Google Play Store and the App Store. So I also invite everyone that is listening to download it to see.
What's the name of the app anyway?
Is W65, which is the name, is the number of the building. How did we came to this app? So we studied this research, and I also want to say hi to Bogdan. That was our former colleague, and he helped a lot. We started this research almost 1 year and a half ago, I think, in end of summer 2019, because we were seeing that some AR apps were available for architecture, and most of them are also related to the construction aspect. You basically have many software companies that are creating apps to facilitate the construction of complex projects that are basically helping the builders with the step-by-step guide during the construction process. They are really more technical, let's say. Mm-hmm. We saw this and we said, okay, what we could do with this, because we are a visualization department, we are not going on site, we have not too much contact with this part of the process. So going into this direction of visualization, we started as always with the small experiments We started with market-based augmented reality. So basically with your camera, with your device and your camera, once you frame something that the app recognizes, the app is going to overlay a model or information, and basically you have this kind of augmented reality that gives you extra information on top of a model, on top of an image, on top of a plan. So really more a simple layer of information on top of something else.
Just for audience to understand, when you released the app, when you presented at the Day of Architecture in Rotterdam, which stage was it the project at?
They were doing the foundations.
Okay, no, I mean in terms of architectural design.
It's totally defined.
Okay.
So we also use a model that is coming from Revit. And yeah, this is also something interesting. During this research, it was difficult to understand at which step the AR technology could jump in, like which step of the process of the project. And this, again, is something that was a bit difficult for us to understand how to fit this kind of technology in the workflow. So also when we were doing all these tests, we were happy with the results because it was something really nice for us also to learn a bit of Unity, scripting, because this is also a big part of the thing. But then, we weren't really satisfied because we didn't know what to do with these apps that we were creating. Like, they are super fun, they are nice, but as Ruggero was saying, they were a bit seen as a kind of video game. Like you could place, your scaled model on the table, but then, what do you do with that somehow? No, what was a bit the question. And then we came up with this idea to say, let's do a visualization, let's say for real, let's do a photo match in augmented reality, and then we choose Casanova, that is also really close to our office, so we could go there and do a lot of tests. And we prepared this app with a one-to-one model, so that is really, let's say, filling the footprint that there is now in the construction site. And this was quite successful because it was really straightforward, it was really something that was fitting the workflow, because it's also at the end of the process. It's something that is going to be built, but it's not there yet. We saw it as a really good result. We also saw, and especially for this kind of technology that is not so used maybe as VR. Now VR, I think, is quite popular, maybe also in architectural offices. At least our office is really into VR. And we saw with AR that the audience is really important. As we were saying before, also you were mentioning that there was also images need to be done according to which audience, who is the client, who will be the person that is going to watch the image. We saw that when we presented it to the office, to our colleagues, that we did an excursion to the construction site, they were of course amazed, like, this is really good. But, they are all people that are also used into technology, used into VR. And so the effect was a bit less wow than what we saw during the Day of Architecture, in which the audience was a completely different kind. So no architects, but let's say normal people. And even buyers. That was the funniest part. I
just want to make what's the Day of Architecture? Since probably now people are wondering, what's the Day of Architecture? I can explain that because I was there, so I know a bit about that. It's a day in Rotterdam in which basically there's a big, wide, open-air exhibition of architecture coming to fruition to the public in Rotterdam, in which architects explain where and how this architecture will be and will be built, all the new architecture as well. So it's a way to introduce the citizenship with all the things going on architecture in Rotterdam. It's a really interesting event. I don't know how many days it is, 2 or 3, something like that right now.
I think it's just a weekend, no?
Yeah, I think this year was 2 days, maybe for COVID.
So anyway, this AR presentation of Casanova was part of this manifestation.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning something about the buyers of the apartments. So the people that saw the Casanova in AR, were there potential buyers or people that already bought the apartments? Because I'm interested in understanding the impact of this app on potential buyers.
I think there were both of these categories. Most of them were already people that bought apartments, in Casanova or in the Muse, that is the building next to it.
Yeah.
Again, from Barcode. And it was fun because somehow there were these, 50 years old or even older that maybe, they don't even know what AR is. Because I think nowadays many people knows a bit Instagram or Snapchat or Pokemon Go, for instance, what it is. But they were really like amazed that they could see the building on their phone. And basically this app has 3 different, functions. We overlay 3 different models. So one is fully rendered, one is the structure, and one was for fun for that day. So I'm not gonna say what it is, but if you download the app, you could see it. And basically also for the structure, they were really like amazed because we placed also all the poles that are in the ground. So you could really see how many poles they are needed to make it stand, which is also, I think, quite interesting for someone that is not an architect or an engineer. And then also the fun thing was that they were even asking for updates. So they were like, but are you going to release any updates? Because, maybe I want to see where is going to be the 17th floor because I bought an apartment there. Can you do this? So they were also like somehow really into that, like suggesting things. And I think that was the most successful part of the app. It was a spot on, like was perfect for that day. I think that they enjoyed really a lot.
Nice. I want to make you a difficult question now. I hope you can answer me because it's a great educational tool. It's a great communication tool. Educating also the buyers on how a building is going to look like, how is it built, etc. So this is coming already late in the sales process, which is when the building is already, well underway. Many people have bought apartments. But if you were to apply AR to the sales process, to convince buyers to buy a part of that building, an apartment, or rent it, which way would you go for that?
I think that can be a really impressive tool, I would say. Now we are super used in images. Also, real estate are using 360 videos now also to show you the apartment. But when you talk about a full building, and Casanova is more than 100 meters, so it's a tall building. There's no way to explain in such a correct way. I forgot to say, of course, this app was built to work perfectly on the spot. So if you download it now, you can see Casanova, but it's going to appear a bit far away from you because you should be on the construction site to really see it. So this kind of experience would be great if a buyer could see it before buying the apartment. Also, I think it can make the difference in explaining really the quality of something. Because you can say, this building will have a first floor, a ground floor that is 5 meters high. It's a super high quality entrance lobby. But if you don't see it, it remains like just information. But if you see it with your eyes in the correct spot, I think it could really make a difference.
Yeah, it's a great tool to contextualize also the building.
Yeah, in this way, I think it's a really great tool.
Because if you were to show the building in several points, you should do several images, as many as the points that you want to show. While with the AR app, provided that you're at the right point in the process, you can just go around with the app and see the building from different angles, from different views, from different, for example, streets. And that's super interesting because you really get the full picture of how the building works with the surrounding context somehow.
But I also think that for the architecture offices is a great thing. I mean, you put a lot of effort to do details in a way that they look nice, or you make a lot of design decisions that, you know that you make it, but then it's always a bit difficult to explain them through images. And in this way, it can be really a tool also from the other side, not only for the buyers that they know what they are buying, but also from the architects that they can explain better what they are selling.
Have you tried this technology with the architects?
Yes, we tried. We tried with our colleagues. I think that they were all super happy to see it, also because it's quite close to the office. So it was really like a nice lunch break. But somehow the thing that we are all more used into technology, was a bit less wow effect. but still they saw the potential.
How did they use it to, review the building? Is there a possibility to review the building with AR inside the office?
Yeah, potentially it could be. You can review it. Depends on which kind of app you prepare. But for instance, you can prepare an app that only shows you one part of the building, or a mock-up, for instance, just a piece of facade. I don't know, and you can just place it wherever you want. But in this way, I think that virtual reality is more effective.
Yeah, more as a communication tool. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes more similar to what you could do in virtual reality, which is also more efficient for doing this kind of thing.
So the users of this app were quite satisfied, were quite happy, to the extent that they asked for updates on this app. But do you foresee using this technology for other buildings that you're working on? Or are you developing any other app of this kind on projects?
Now we are indeed studying something that can be applied in a bigger scale, probably. And maybe also during the process. So while Casanova came when the design was completely defined, the idea that now we have a bigger scale pilot in which can really be helpful to even check volumes, relationship between volumes, always in leaving you the familiarity of the place, because also is one of the main features of the AR that gives you the familiarity. Can be familiarity of an object, of a place, of a concept. Everyone can identify with it, and then that makes you have a self-induced wonder moment, no? That you really have an extra layer of understanding. And we believe also that the future development or research we are going to do regarding this kind of technology are going to also include other features, like trying to implement informations, starting from geolocalization, big data. Now big data sounds a bit too ambitious, but we would like to add some information that can go beyond architecture. This can be really the next step of this kind of applications.
What kind of information? Because I'm not so into big data. Can you just give me some tangible example of this kind of information?
For instance, working on educational projects, the app could implement a system in which you can also get, for instance, direction inside the plot. Because of course, when we are talking about a skyscraper that you see from outside, it's almost like an object. You can just go a bit around. But when you have to explore the plot, explore the site, then you can really add a lot of extra layers. So you can think about directions, you can add diagrams, so you can even think about, what you're going to see, and you can foresee where, for instance, the students are moving in this campus, where are the lectures. So you can imagine it as almost a diagram that you see with your eyes, so one-to-one scale. Whatever you can put in a diagram in a video, you can also apply to a AR experience.
All right. Okay. Now I understood. Just to move towards the end of this conversation, that's something else I want to ask you, that it goes a bit outside the AR and VR discourse. You work in an architectural company, and you did a lot of research and development also, in the sense that you let understand architects that some things could be useful for your and their workflow, even library organization, some things that are taken for granted by other people but should not. What would you suggest to other people working in-house that are facing a similar process and they want to improve the workflow of their team? What would you suggest to focus their effort on in terms of research and development?
Well, what we really advise is more the mindset. So for instance, whenever you do something new, the best thing to do is process capture. We are quite against the magic process, no? That maybe you do an amazing video once, but if you do have to make an option of this video or change because the geometry is changed a few days before the deadline, and you cannot, that is really messed up. So the first step is really being able to nail down the process.
Okay.
Whatever you're doing, just be aware that you're going to reproduce it, and then that you also spot what are the possible mistakes. So, for instance, if you're working with different softwares, you need interoperability between these softwares. So it's super useless if you start to, every time export something from a software, then it's upside down in the other one, then it's not in place. This is really the base. So you can think about it, Rhino or 3ds Studio Max to Photoshop. but could be Rhino to Revit, Revit to Rhino, whatever. Interoperability is a pillar of the entire research and development. Of course, libraries, pipelines really nail down what you have to do before, in which moment you have to do, and what you have to do. Also, it's super important to keep being up to date. So don't be lazy and go for the softwares that does things better. At some point, keep doing something with the software becomes really stupid in a way, no? So when you have the possibility to go for automatized processes, just go for them. Nowadays, everyone is talking a bit about artificial intelligence. There is a lot of prejudice towards it, but I do believe that when a part of the process can be done automatically, just go for it. The human role in that is being able to think out of the box. So the human must be aware of when you want to go for that process or when you really want to start the process all over again. The future is towards that kind of workflow. So yeah, don't be lazy in software explorations. That also relates to coding. It's also another big topic of architecture. Now looks super scary. It's a new language, no? But for sure, in the near future, coding is going to be more and more involved in architecture. Then, of course, that can be filtered by, visual coding, like visual nodes. But it's another thing that in every field, not only visualization, but in every field, coding is going to be super important. To sum up, is really to stay up to date on what the world is proposing. And you can also discover it by just daily checking ArcDaily, for instance. Just to make up numbers, 20% of the news that you read are about technologies, even more. That can be artificial intelligence, can be 3D printed, AR. So it's quite clear that an architectural company cannot be based on principles based on 20 years ago.
Especially, I like the point that you made on AI, because many people, you know how it is. People freak out. Oh, AI is going to take our job. What I think is exactly what you think, that AI is going to automatize the boring tasks for artists. And that's something I look forward to. I was researching recently into trying to make AI-powered cutouts with face swap to solve like anonymization problems. Not successful yet on that, but I'll try to look further into that. And maybe let you know if something comes up.
Yeah, super interesting. Yeah. Because, for instance, we had recently to work on a project in Asia. It was just a competition so far. But yeah, indeed, we don't have a lot of assets in terms of people from Asia in the software that we are currently using. So we really had to do a bit of face swap, even in post-production, because, indeed, you don't have also time to look for all the assets fit in the specific area of the world. So yeah, that could be a super interesting idea.
My dream would be having an on-demand software, on-demand service that like dishes you out cutouts that you can choose ethnicity, age, and activity. It's a long goal, but that would be super interesting, especially for my kind of workflow, that I use a lot of 2D assets. But that's a story for another time. Maybe we should talk about this in the future, but in the meantime, I'll just thank you for your time, and I hope the people are going to be interested, especially people that work as in-house visualizers, because there is not so much interest about these people, but I think we should talk more about how people work in architecture office to improve both quality on life and their workflow, because many people really need to, hear from other people doing this. So guys, thank you again for your time, and see you hopefully in the next episode, maybe with some updates on your future research.
Thank you for the chance that you gave us. It was really fun and great. Yeah, super interesting.
Pleasure was all mine, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcasting app and get a new episode every second week. If you like this episode, help us growing and improving the show by rating and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Got a question, or is there something you would like me to cover in a future episode? Write me an email at podcast@bigpicturevisual.com. Thank you again for listening, and see you next time.